There we go. We're live now. I pressed the wrong button. Never mind. We'll start all over again. So, good afternoon. Welcome to the Do3 weekly coaches question and answer session. It is live, broadcasting around the globe to nobody at the moment by the looks of it, but never mind. I'm sure some people will come on shortly. So, no one's watching at the moment, but for those of you who watch this back later on, we'll do some introductions. I'm Dave Knight. I'm the head coach at Do3. We're a coaching organisation based in the UK and have squad sessions. Well, when we're not on lockdown, we have squad sessions a lot of the time, mostly swimming, but all sorts of stuff going on. Training camps, coached athletes, well, everything, really, everything. And Corin to my, well, on the side there, oh, that's the wrong way, that way, the cameras are reversed, that way, is one of the Do3 coaches. So, do you want to say hello, Corin?
Hello. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm one of the coaches. I coach mostly at Solihull Swim Squad.
Okay.
And I also work pretty much full time for Dave in the office as well, normally.
Yeah, yeah, normally. We don't live in a normal world anymore, though, do we? It's like, it's bonkers world at the moment. But anyway, so yeah, if you're watching and you've got any questions, then if you feel free to send them in. Triathlon related, anything that you think we can help with, swimming, cycling, running, anything really related to the sport, send it in, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. And if we can't help you out, we'll find out and let you know at some point. We're doing this every week at 3 p.m. That's the plan anyway, and we seem to have managed it so far, don't we? So we do have a number of questions which have been sent in to us beforehand, so we'll crack on with those. But again, if you want to send some questions, send them in. Just type them in the box wherever you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Type them in the comments, and they should pop up on our screen here as and when you do. If you just want to say hello, to give us a bit of support, give us a bit of love, then do that. Got Pat and Stephanie watching. Hello both. So far have popped up on the screen and said hello. So nice to see you guys. Right, should we crack on with the first? Should we crack on with the first question? Right, so hopefully this will work. There we go. Pat, look at that. What a massive coincidence. Pat happens to be watching, has made a comment, and we've got a question from Pat. Pat, it makes it look like you're the only viewer now, because you're the only on here and you're the only question so far. So we do have more people watching than that. Right, so I've had a few emails from Pat. I've had a few emails from Training Peaks saying my threshold heart rate value has increased. The latest one has gone up by 15 beats a minute, whereas earlier ones were a lot lower. Should I do anything about it on my Training Peaks account? Well, yes, you should really. There's probably a couple of ways of looking at this. Really, if you are a coached athlete, i.e., kind of one-to-one coaching, then that should be something that your coach should be aware of. And I happen to know that you're not coached. You're one of our commit athletes, so it's slightly different. So you guys have to sort of arrange your thresholds and things, your settings yourselves. Or if you're not sure you're doing the right thing, you come speak to us. But generally, if you're a coached athlete, as in one-to-one coaching, the coaches should set you some kind of tests to do along the way through as your training progresses, and use the results of those to actually go in and set your threshold values and the various parameters within the Training Peaks for you, because it's accurate. It's important that it is tracking your ability level as you're progressing through training. So for yourself, Pat, yeah, if it's saying that you need to update your training, your threshold zones, so your threshold level and your training zones as a result of that, then yeah, you can go into Training Peaks, and I'll show you on my screen actually how you do that. Or I think you can set it to change automatically as well. I'm kind of reluctant to do that. I wouldn't advise doing that because it might be changing things you're not even aware of. At least if it gives you the option, you're aware of it then, and then you can choose to go in and change it or not. Okay, so you're doing the right thing, absolutely changing it. So if I show you my screen here now, he says, there we go. Show you my screen here. So this is my own account. So if I go into, my computer's struggling under the strain. It's going very slowly at the moment. Let's just wait for it to sort itself out. Here we go. So if we go into here and go into zones, so just click the little kind of gear icon at the top there and go into zones. Pressing the gear will open up your account settings. So one of the options is zones there. And for your running heart rate, if you just scroll down all these various different heart rates, so you've got default values for heart rate and power and that kind of thing. So generally ignore the default one because you want to put specific heart rate values in and make it more dialed in if you can. So as you can see there, you've got bike heart rate and there's your run heart rate. Is there a swim heart rate? There's no swim heart rate, but you can add a swim heart rate if you happen to have a heart rate strap that will work in the pool or in the water. So there's your run heart rate. So you'd pop your heart rate threshold in there. Don't worry too much about the max heart rate and the resting heart rate because all you're going to do is you're going to select. God, this is being really twitchy. So lactate threshold as the auto calculation. So if I do that now, and then just select Joe Friel for running and hit calculate. Now I'm not going to do that because it's going to potentially change all mine. Hit calculate, and what it'll do is it'll fill these boxes in down here with your actual zones, and then you save them. Okay, and if you want to write these zones down, these are the zones that if it's telling you the training session is telling you to be in zone 4 or zone 2 or zone 1, then they're the heart rate values that you need to stick to. All right, so yeah, absolutely go in there and change your heart rate, and you want to make sure that it's always kind of dialed in. Once your heart rate is set, generally it will stay fixed. It tells me that you've kind of you've maybe got a little bit fitter, but maybe your original test results weren't quite so accurate, which is why you're continually getting notifications that your heart rate value has changed. It's probably because they needed setting up a little bit more accurately in the first place. Because generally heart rate zones don't change too much. The threshold levels, for example, top of zone 4, zone 5, will be staying around about the same kind of point. They shouldn't move too much. So anyway, so hopefully that answers your question. Let's get us all back on the screen again. Right, there we go. So I hope that answers your question. Hope that answers your question, Pat. I think that answers it, doesn't it? 15 beats. Yeah. So that's it. That should be all right. Pat. If you've got any more, kind of comments on that, you want to come back to us. You got anything else you want to clarify? Should I move that out of the way? then let us know, and we can take that a little bit further. But yeah, absolutely. Just go in there and change them when you're ready. Afternoon, Carl. Pat's not alone. There's Carl as well. Well, that's 2. That's 2. Anyway, so we've doubled our viewing figures today. They're 4, in fact, because we'll count ourselves as well because we're getting a bit desperate. Right. Anything you want to add to that? Anything you want to add to that, Corinne?
No, I think that's covered it all.
No. Okay. Good. That was a straightforward one. Obviously, we've seen these before. They've kind of popped up on the screen here, and they're mostly open water swimming questions now, which is not a huge surprise because everyone's suddenly going open water swimming again with the lack of the pools and things. So this is a question we missed out from last week, so apologies for that, Lucy, but it probably works this week anyway because of all the open water swimming questions. So question for Q&A. What's the life expectancy of a wetsuit? Does one fit all in terms of scenarios and weather, etc., or is it best to gradually build a repertoire? E.g., shortless, sleeveless, shorty, race skin thing for non-wetsuit races, different thicknesses, thermal, etc. Okay. It's quite a difficult one, actually. It depends. It depends how often you're using the suits. It depends how well you look after them. I think, well, personally speaking, my own experience of wetsuits, I'm sure Corin, you'll have some comments on this as well, is that after kind of 2 or 3 years of good use, they do get a bit battered. They do get covered in nicks and scratches and this, that, and the other. And a lot of people will actually change shape a little bit as the years kind of progress. So normally the kind of natural frequency of changing your suit would be every kind of 2 or 3 years. But if you look after your suit, I mean, the neoprene shouldn't really degrade as long as you're not kind of putting it in chlorine all the time and not rinsing it properly. So if you look after your suit, there's no reason why it shouldn't last substantially longer than that. So first of all, put it down to kind of the care of the wetsuit. So if you're going to use it in a pool, quite often we use or fairly often we use the wetsuits in the pool just to kind of get used to what it feels like swimming in a wetsuit. If you're going to use it in chlorine, you've got to rinse it thoroughly afterwards, get all that chlorine off, because the chlorine will eat away at the neoprene. If you're using it in the open water, it should be washed after every use anyway. And just look after it. Don't chuck it in the back of your car with all your bike gear and cover it in nicks and scratches and oil and all that kind of stuff. Dry them off and look after them. Things like being careful when you put the suit on, because nails can really obviously kind of gouge into the legs, and over time you'll end up with lots of little nicks and scratches on your wetsuit. They can be repaired. There's a product called Black Witch, which I've never used myself actually, but I had a top tip given to me by the guys down at Snug years ago, in terms of just using puncture repair glue rather than Black Witch. So the idea with that is that you get a little kind of the old school puncture repair glue that you used to kind of get with your bikes. You don't get it so much now; they're like stick on patches, aren't they? But puncture repair glue, you put it on the nick or the tear, and you wait for it and on both sides of the tear, so both sides of the hole, if you like. Wait for it to dry, and then put another layer on both sides, and then stick it together, and it should bond really well. So you should be able to fix quite a few little nicks and scratches. What else is there? Can you think of anything else, Corinne?
No, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've had one wetsuit ever since I started. Really, I got quite a decent wetsuit in 2015, and I only replaced it last year because of the size of it, really, and the fitting of it. It was flooding a bit, rather than it being damaged or the material degrading at all. So I think fingernails are the biggest culprit of wrecking wetsuits, and it's an expensive piece of kit. So having your nails short is worthwhile to look after it. But there's certainly some brands that seem to last longer than others. One other tip that is worth bearing in mind is not drying them in direct sun, or in the heat. Just hang them somewhere in the shade to dry rather than having them in direct sun. But so my first proper triathlon wetsuit's still going strong 5 years on. So they should last a good few years if they're a reasonable quality suit.
Yeah, and that's quite a good point actually, because most triathletes will start off in the sport. They might get quite a basic suit, and they'll end up changing the suit, not because there's a problem with the old suit, but because they want to get something a little bit more flexible, a kind of the buoyancy panels in the suits on the kind of the mid and upper kind of range suits are slightly differently arranged. So it may well be, because generally the entry level suits are quite thick neoprene all over, because it's cheaper to make a suit that way. But what that does is it makes you super buoyant all over, and you might not necessarily need that. Too much buoyancy for some people can cause you to be too high in the water, and you can lose a bit of traction in your stroke. So people will sometimes change their suits simply because they want to get a better suit. Too thick a neoprene on the shoulders, it leads to a bit of restriction in the stroke. When you're starting to take the stroke here, above the shoulders and also under the arms, if it's too thick, it just doesn't give you the movement and the freedom that you like. So the more expensive suits, they go down to, certainly down to 1.5 mil. I'm not sure if they're down to 1 mil actually in some areas, but they have really thin panels on the shoulders and the areas of the body which move the most. And of course, they are then quite liable to be snagged. You haven't got much there kind of in terms of protection. But the quality of the suits these days, certainly for some of the brands, they are. I mean, the Yonder suits that we're kind of working with at the moment, and this is not a PR job for Yonder, but the quality of them has been fantastic, and really surprised me what you can do with the really thin neoprene. You can really pull it about, and it didn't seem to kind of have any problems with it. I don't know. I haven't put mine on all that much, in fairness. But you've been getting on with yours, Corin, haven't you?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I thought I'd got a pretty good wetsuit before I got that one,
Yeah,
and I had a fairly high end one. But going on to the Yonder one, it may be that technology has moved on a bit
yeah,
since I bought my other one, but also so it seems a brilliant suit and very flexible in the shoulders,
yeah,
so you get very little restriction of movement.
yeah, yeah. And in terms of wetsuit fitting, I know we're kind of going off a bit of a tangent here, but we might as well kind of talk about it while we're on the subject of wetsuits. Wetsuit fitting, um, it's quite easy to get sucked into the whole. You know, you see all the big brands in the magazines and online and that kind of thing, and you think that should be the suit for you because that's what everyone else is wearing. You see it all the time, and it's not just triathlon wetsuits that this happens in. It's all sorts of triathlon equipment. You know, there seems to be a flavour of the month or the flavour of the year, a particular product. So I wouldn't get sucked into that too much. The best thing for you to do really is to try as many suits on as you can, because as Corin mentioned earlier, it's the most important thing is getting that fit right. You've got to get that fit right. Generally, people when they buy a suit without too much knowledge will get a suit which is too big.
Mm.
So
That's exactly what I did.
yeah, because when you put the suit on, depending on how flexible it is and whether you put it on correctly, that's another thing. Um, you might feel that it's actually it feels slightly uncomfortable because it's very restrictive, particularly across the chest and the shoulders. Um, Obviously, there's a kind of fine line here between it actually is too restrictive on your movement, but generally it should be just a little bit too tight for comfort. Um, if you put it on and it's nice and comfy, then it's going to be too big for you, particularly when you get in the water and you get some water inside the suit.
Mm.
Um, it will move around and it'll be a little bit more kind of you'll realize it's too big for you. And the biggest area of space normally for most people is in the small of the back. So a good test is if you put your wetsuit on and you get someone behind you to grab, you see my hands here, to grab the kind of zip in the small of your back and just see how much movement there is. If you can pull it out by 6 inches, then that area is going to fill full of water. You're going to end up with, well, a litre of water weighs a kilo, doesn't it? So you could end up with a couple of kilos of water sloshing around your middle. So you've got to make sure they fit really, really well. That's really important. So it's difficult these days, isn't it? Because you can't actually try them on anywhere. It's there's no triathlon shops around anymore, or not so many. So I would make a journey somewhere, put some effort in. If you're really serious about getting a good quality suit that's going to fit you, then put the effort in to travel, or well, I would say get them sent out and send them back again if they don't fit. But I'm not a big fan of that either, to be honest, because of killing the planet and all that kind of thing. But try and find a retailer that's got a decent range, and try them on.
Quite often, I mean, it's not happening at the moment, but certainly last season and prior to that, a lot of the wetsuit manufacturers have try-on sessions at the open water venues. So um, if you're interested in a particular brand, drop them a message and find out whether they've got any try-on sessions if you've got no local outlets for them otherwise.
It's going to be a funny year this year because of the ultimately all the races have been cancelled. A lot of the manufacturers have got excess stock, and they're going to be desperate to shift it. So it wouldn't surprise me. I know Hoob have been throwing some deals around, and through the squad ourselves, we get a deal with Yonder. So if anyone from the squad is interested in that, then obviously let us know. Um, but yeah, just take your time. Don't rush into buying the first wetsuit that you find. Otherwise, you can come unstuck. And the other part of Lucy's question there, one size fits all in terms of scenarios. Would you build up a kind of repertoire of different types of suit? Um, well, I think it's certainly worth having a race skin if you're going to be swimming in skins. If there's a likelihood of that, i.e., you're not going to need a wetsuit. Sleeveless for some swimmers, then the sleeveless wetsuit could actually be a good option. Um, if you're quite a strong swimmer and you like to kind of get the feel of the water a little bit more, you don't necessarily need the buoyancy in the arms. The buoyancy in the arms isn't going to help you a huge amount anyway. And it's obviously not too cold, because you want covering up if it's too cold. Then sleeveless wetsuits can be worth a go for some people. Shame with similar kind of. Well, I don't really get people racing shorties particularly. Do you see much of that?
I've not seen people racing in shorties. I've seen a few in more recent events wearing sleeveless wetsuits.
Yeah.
But not really shorties.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a race skin from Hoob, and I bought it for Ironman Frankfurt, thinking it was going to be non wetsuit, and it cost an absolute fortune. And I've never worn it. I've literally never worn it. It was 250 quid. It's sitting in my cupboard. So I think there's a lot of race skins who sit in people's wardrobes without ever kind of coming out, to be honest. But if you need one,
and they changed the rules on what they could be made of a couple of years ago as well. So a lot of people who'd spent a lot of money on race skins then couldn't wear the expensive suits that they'd got, because they'd got some kind of, sort of buoyant material that is now no longer legal in triathlon. So
yeah.
If you've got enough money to spend on one, they're great. But if you've got choice of having a good main wetsuit or 3 different cheaper wetsuits, I'd go for the good main one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's pretty much covered all of that. Let's see what else we've got next. Clody's watching as well. This is great. Everyone's watching who's had to put these questions. I guess that's the idea, that they actually watch their own answers. As soon as I get into open water, I start flailing all over the place, Clody. Stroke gone, trying to see where I'm going, but short-sighted, zigzag, disaster. When should I try? I shouldn't laugh, should I, Clody? When should I try to make the best? When I should try to make the best of what I do have. Do you want to take this one, Corinne?
I think Clody just needs to relax and enjoy herself in the water for a bit.
Yeah.
I think you put far too much pressure on yourself, Clody, to get everything right and everything perfect. None of us do. I went for my first open water swim yesterday. I was flailing around like a mad thing. My stroke had gone to pot. But I just really enjoyed being in the water. So if you get into the lake and you just go and swim to the first buoy, just swimming breaststroke, just relax, get your breathing right, and then start doing some crawl. Just think about one aspect of your stroke. Whether I quite often find that just thinking about my breathing is the best thing to relax me. And just not worry if you go a bit off course. Keep looking up, practice your sighting as much as you can, even if you are short-sighted. Just look up and get used to getting into a rhythm of every few strokes. Look up, look where you're going, then put your head down, think back about your breathing again. Just try and enjoy it for the time being. We can do open water skills once we're back in the pool, and have a bit of a practice of it. And we would normally do that at this time of year anyway. But for the moment, just take one step at a time. Just practice one thing at a time, rather than trying to get everything perfect, because none of us ever will do that.
Yeah. I think you're right. Just, it sounds like you kind of get in and you dive into swimming straight away, and you're trying to go fast, and you're trying to worry about not going straight and all this. Just get in and breathe, and just try and get used to being in the water first of all. If you go frequently enough, you should kind of almost feel as comfortable as you do in the pool. It shouldn't really be too much different. It sounds like you're getting a bit anxious, and that's when people's breathing rates start to go up, heart rate starts to go up, and then you get a bit of water in your mouth, and then you start to kind of panic. Just, there's no reason why you should feel like that, really. Just take your time, take some breaths. If needs be, just roll on your back, get your breathing back into control, and then turn onto your front and just take a few strokes. And remember that you're in control. You're in control of what's going on. Okay? So you don't have to complete a lap. You don't have to complete half a lap. You can take 5 strokes and stop and look about. 5 strokes, stop and look about, and stay in control of what you're doing. Get your breath. Um, and just things like that comes down to practice getting in the water regularly, practice the sighting regularly, and just becoming more confident and more at home in the water. Don't expect to get in and thrash it out like you do in the pool. It's just not gonna happen like that. I mean, I haven't been swimming. I haven't been open water swimming for well, I can't remember the last time I went, and I'm sure I'd be the same if I went open water swimming tomorrow. I'd still be anxious because I haven't swum in the open water for God knows how long. I'd still be feeling a little bit. My heart rate would go a little bit. My heart rate, my breathing would be a little bit. It's not quite. You haven't done it for a while. It's not a natural thing for you to do. So just practice, get in and practice, and just don't. Yeah, like Corey says, don't put too much pressure on yourself. It doesn't. It doesn't matter. You don't have to kind of fix everything in one session. We've put out the training, this open water training plan this week. Or was it last week? Anyway, we put the open water training plan out. So it's got some sighting. One of the practical sessions in there is a sighting session. So have a look at that. It might help to give you something to focus on, something to think about, rather than just thinking about what you're doing in the water and panicking a little bit. Just focus on a skill, trying to develop a skill, trying to get from A to B to the buoy at the end as straight as you can. Don't worry about the speed, just worry about getting there nice and straight. And we talked about some methods last week, didn't we, of kind of reducing anxiety a little bit in the open water, in terms of kind of trying to think inwardly rather than outwardly. So that's similar to what I've just said, actually. So people panic when they think about other people around them. There might be some swans looking at you. There might be, it might start raining. It might be quite choppy or windy. You might get water in your mouth. You're thinking about all these things which are outside of you and outside of your control. And they're the things that you can start to worry about. The depth of the water and what's down there and all this kind of stuff. So you can start to think inwardly. Just think about your breathing. Just think about just kind of staying in control, looking straight ahead, thinking about that you're in control. And again, right, as I said right at the start, know that you're in control of what's happening. Okay. At any time you can stop, you can roll on your back and have a breather. So it's actually quite nice in that respect. Clodie, you need to try that. Try and roll on your back and just float. Just lie still and float. Breathe in and out. And then once you know that you can do that, even if it goes completely pear-shaped and you really start to panic, you know you can just roll on your back, recompose yourself, and then off you go again. All right? So hopefully that's that. Clodie's
also put about taking in a lot of horrible water in response to that.
Yeah, that's not good. Don't do that. It's probably because you're breathing quite hard, you're panicking, and you're lifting your head up too much, and it starts to splash around, and it won't be your natural kind of stroke. So obviously we don't want you drinking too much water, because it's probably not the best thing to do anyway. But it's all the things we just said. Really, it's just trying to relax a little bit. If you don't swallow a lot of swimming pool water, you shouldn't swallow a lot of open water. It shouldn't really be any different. But I suspect, again, you're probably lifting your head up because you're panicking a little bit, trying to breathe. You're lifting your head up a little bit too much, and then your head goes down a bit deeper than it would otherwise, and it can just kind of lead to a little bit of a chain reaction there. But you've got to try and stay in control a little bit. And if there's anything else you want to add to that, Corinne?
I think for the taking in water is often down to sort of, like you said, head moving around too much. If you can try and keep that nice sort of steady head position with your forehead just into the water, and then you can turn to the side, and that you get the bow wave over the front and the dip at the side, and you should have clear air to breathe here. If your head's going up and down, you lose that nice bow wave and the little pocket of air to breathe into. So just try and keep your head a little bit steadier. You will still need to lift it up to breathe, but to sight, obviously. But keep your head steady as much as you can, and make sure you're breathing out fully when your head's in the water. And so coming back to what we said before, just try and relax your breathing and keep yourself nice and steady in the water. Don't worry about speed, just take it nice and steady.
That's a good point, actually. If you're holding your breath, Chloe, which you probably will be, if you're panicking a little bit, getting a bit anxious, you might be not breathing in a relaxed manner, holding your breath. So when you're actually turning to breathe, you're having to kind of gasp out and then suck air in quite quickly, and you might take some water in because of that. So if you breathe, just breathe out into the water and then turn to breathe in at the side. Um, it should make things a little bit better for you. As always, focus on the breathing out. The breathing in will happen all by itself. You don't really need to worry about breathing in. Your body will make that happen. But breathing out, you have to focus on a little bit more. So give that a go. Give that a go. And relax. Yeah, you've said yourself, Chloe, there, relax. It's easier said than done, but you've got to practice. You've got to practice. Go with somebody who you're comfortable with, and just don't go in areas. There might be some deeper bits, some shallower bits. Just go in areas of the lake or the river, wherever it is that you're a bit more comfortable with. Don't try and go too far too soon, if that makes sense. So, right, so let's have a look at the next one. So we've got John's popped up. Afternoon, John. Good to see you. Late arrival. That's all right, John. We'll let you off just once. And Pat's commented, yeah, so it's bike thresholds, not run thresholds, but it's the same. It's the same as what I showed you for the run side of things. The only thing with the bike thresholds is the options are slightly different on the calculations. Okay, so what we actually do at Do3 is we transfer. It's a bit complicated, but we transfer them onto. There's 6 bike zones on Training Peaks, and we use 7. So we actually add another zone in there. The best thing for me to do, Pat, rather than trying to explain that now, which will take some explanation, is I think we did a spreadsheet. We did a different.
It's on the web, on the commit page. There should be a video on the commit page, and I think it's possibly also on the website of how to set up your bike zones. So it should all be there, and we can have a look for that for Pat to point her in the right direction.
Yeah. So run zones have got 7 zones, bike zones have got 6. So yeah, we added in the 7th zone, which is the sweet spot zone, to make it so it all matches and makes it easier for people. So yeah, we'll have a. If you're not sure where to find that, Pat, let us know, and we'll have a look.
She's put that she used it when she originally set the zones up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go through that again. If you've got any problems with that, then let us know. You've asked there, once the wetsuit's been rinsed and dried, is it better to store hanging or folded? I don't know really. I would guess hanging it up would be slightly better. But I've always rolled mine up, and I've never had a problem with that either. So I think the most important thing is that you look after it, and you don't. What you can get with wetsuits, if it gets caught somewhere, or you put something too heavy on it, it can end up with dents and creases and things like that on it. So just try and look after it as best you can. If you're going to roll it up, maybe roll it up with a towel inside of it or something, just so as you kind of give it a bit of TLC. But I can't imagine there'd be too many problems with kind of neatly folding it up.
I think that if you're going to hang it, you need a hanger that's got quite sort of wide ends rather than sort of wire hanger kind of thing. So I've always, one with shoulder pads. I've always folded mine and never really had an issue. Just fold it behind the knees and the waist, and I think that's how both the wetsuits I've had previously have said to leave them once they're fully dry. You need to make sure it's completely dry, but to fold it rather than hang it.
Yeah. So just rinse it off. Really rinse it off thoroughly in the shower. Turn it inside out. Rinse it off again, and then I always leave mine to dry inside out, and then turn it the right way round, and then store it then. Okay. So next one. Right, Joe. So I know that drafting in the swim saves energy, and get how it works on mass starts, sort of. Assuming drafting will be allowed in future events in the swim, how does it work with a rolling start? Do you put a slightly faster time? Okay, I see where we're going with this, Joe. Do you put a slightly faster time in the hope that you get some genuinely faster swimmers, or does it accept you're likely to be able to draft? Being stuck in pool tries behind people who overestimated their speed. It's annoying. Okay, right. Simple answer to that question is yes. You need to position yourself where you stand the most chance of getting in the group of swimmers, in amongst the group of swimmers who are slightly faster than you. And of course, in an Ironman, in a mass start, sorry, in a rolling start, unless you know people, unless you know what everyone's going to be doing, which you don't, then it is going to be a bit of guesswork, and you have to kind of strike it lucky to a degree. I wouldn't, I wouldn't, I wouldn't advise playing it too safe and sitting. Oh, it's my first race. I'm going to sit right at the back of the pen, because you will get stuck behind people. Um, so the best advice, similar to what we've been doing on the biking, actually on the bike races, is put yourself towards in your correct zone, but towards the front of that zone where you genuinely think you can perform. And then what will happen is the faster swimmers will go off at the start, but they will be swimming generally much faster than they will hold for the race for the first few minutes. So expect, and we do this in training quite a lot, is expect a fast start, and then again, similar to the bike racing, it will settle down, and that's when you need to find someone's feet. So it's going to be all. Well, the rolling start is a bit more space these days, so it's not too bad. But I would certainly try and find somebody once the initial kind of burst is out the way. It's not. I mean, when in the days of mass starts, it used to be a massive free for all, and then you'd have to kind of battle it out and wait for it all to really calm down. It is quite a lot different now when it's rolling starts, but people will still go off a little bit quicker. But I guess in general, people are going to be a little bit more kind of honest in terms of where they see themselves, a bit more organised, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, put yourself towards the front end of the area that you're expecting, the time you're expecting to hit. Put a good solid start in, and once everything settles down after a couple of 100 meters, then try and find some feet. In terms of drafting, it's actually more effective to draft on the hip, just behind the hip, than it is directly behind, which some people get confused about. They think it's more effective to draft behind. It's actually not. Right on the hip is the best place to draft. And if you think about it, this is a really good place for you to draft as well, because you can keep an eye on the person that you're drafting with, sorry. Provided they're going in a straight line. You obviously have to make sure that you're going straight, otherwise they could be taking you off on like around the block or something. So draft on the hip. And what can be quite easy when you're drafting is because you get so much benefit from it, and it makes it so much easier, is you can actually think, this is too easy for me, and then you pull out and overtake, and then realise actually no, that guy was actually going quite a steady pace, and then you kind of sheepishly go back in position again. But just be careful about getting overconfident when it feels too easy, because it is much harder to swim on the front. So just give it a bit of time. If they're obviously too slow for you, then clearly that's a different thing. But it should be just kind of uncomfortably comfortable. We keep on talking about that. You can hang on there, stay on the hip, and if you can't quite hold the hip, then just slip back and sit on the feet instead. All right. If you're breathing bilaterally, then obviously every second breath you'll be able to see the person next to you. If you can only breathe on one side, clearly it makes sense if you're drafting on the hip, and you're going to be turning to look at them. So don't draft on the wrong side and then look away from them every time you breathe, otherwise you won't have a clue where they are. All right, so just think about what side you're going to draft on if you're only breathing on one side. Having said that, if it's choppy and the wind's blowing and there's all sorts of wind and water coming the other way, then you might have to take that into account as well. So there's lots of kind of variables for you to think about there. It saves a huge amount of energy. We've done this in the pool before, and we kind of estimated it can be worth kind of 10 seconds, 15 seconds per 100. It can be worth that much. Sometimes I can stay with Corin when I draft Corin, for example. I won't be able to stay with Corin normally, only for a few meters, to be fair. But so it is really valuable, and it can save you a load of energy. So it's good to practice it. Go swimming with some people are slightly faster than you. Try and hound to their feet, and just get used to doing it. You got anything else to add to that comment?
Not in terms of open water events. I think the kind of events you're referring to are things like the Ironman ones, where they tend to send you off in 4 or so at a time. I'm just wondering whether Joe is referring to the rolling starts that have been proposed by organisations like UK Triathlon for when they
Okay.
start doing
Yeah,
races
yeah,
again this year.
yeah,
So pool-based triathlons and so UK Triathlon do this anyway for things like Stratford and Warwickshire Tri, where they start you off at 10-second intervals, I think.
yeah.
I think they're proposing to make those intervals longer for when they start back this year. So rather than 10-second intervals, I think it's going to be potentially 30-second intervals to enable you to socially distance for competitors. So I think drafting is actually going to not be particularly relevant if you're going off at 30-second intervals anyway. But I know certainly for some of those events where there've been 10-second intervals, you do very often get people who've just guesstimated a time for their 400 or whatever distance you're doing, and it can be quite a long way out, and it is really frustrating if you get stuck behind them. There's not a great deal you can do about that. I mean, those of us who swim with the squad are pretty accurate at knowing how long we'll take over 400 meters, but most people they don't really know how long it will take them, and it's a guesstimate. So some do it deliberately, putting a faster time than they expect, just so they don't get stuck behind someone. But a lot of people just do it by accident. I don't think I would possibly err on the side of your fastest time when you submit a time. Don't hold back because put in your best effort, what you expect your best effort to be.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to get swum over by people if you put one in that's too fast and you can't stay ahead.
Just put your most recent PB time in there for whatever distance it is, and that'll be fine. I mean, you're actually swimming slightly. So, for example, I know you just popped up and you said it's kind of more Ironman related, but
Okay.
for pool stuff, if you're swimming 16 lengths or 12 lengths at Stratford and 33, then and you're also swimming across the pool, and you're also having to go round people and duck under lane ropes, you're swimming further than that. So if you put yourself down as your 400 PB time and you get out anywhere near your 400 PB time, you should be quite pleased with that. So I would kind of err on like Corey says, on that kind of slightly faster end. I'd like to say everyone should put the correct time down, but it's never going to happen, is it? But yeah, so that's the advice there. So Joe, you've added more Ironman related, as you assumed. Rolling
That's
Start
okay.
were seeded. Yeah, so they are seeded. I don't know if you're aware of how they do it at the Ironman, Joe, but they have pens for you to go into, a little bit like London Marathon, the kind of running pens. You go in there and you self-seed based on your expected finishing time. The pens are pretty big, so as we spoke about previously, I don't know exactly what the kind of category, but it may well be. So I don't know, 1 hour 10 to 1 hour 20, for example. So you've got a 10-minute category. So seed yourself. If you're 1:15, I would put yourself towards the front of that, because you want to be swimming. Trying to stay on the feet of the 110ers, if that makes sense, rather than swimming easy on the feet of the 115ers, if that makes sense. So you want to be towards the front end of that group. Albeit, again, on a rolling start, you're all spread out, so it's not quite as simple as that. And trying to find somebody is a little bit more difficult.
And they do send you off at sort of 4 or 5 at a time, even within those pens. So you're not going to be in a sort of, your pen is not all going to go off together.
Yeah.
They'll just take you 4 or 5 at a time, and so you're not going to have a massive choice of people to draft off anyway.
Yeah. I think the most important thing in terms of getting a good swim time is, well, A, making sure you swim fit, B, making sure you've got the skills so you can swim straight, because you can swim as fast as you like, but if you're doing an extra 400 meters, then you're shooting yourself in the foot there. So again, when you're talking to Clody, just spend time making sure you can swim straight. What else is there? Just effectively kind of turning around the buoys, knowing how to judge the effort, because in a 25-meter pool, you know exactly what pace you are, because you've got a water hit every 25 meters. But in the open water, you're not quite so sure. So you can do a bit of homework usually, and you can work out if you kind of do a recce of the course and have a look at the notes, you should be able to figure out where the boys are roughly in terms of distance. And if you've got a gadgety watch, maybe you can get it to buzz every 500 meters or something, and you can kind of get a bit an idea about what kind of pace you're swimming at. But you should be practicing enough, particularly in the open water, to know what that kind of correct effort level feels like. So just practice. Again, with anything, you shouldn't be going into race day with anything being unknown. You should have practiced it so many times that it'll be second nature to you. It shouldn't be a problem. So I hope that answers your question, Joe. That makes sense. Good. So I'll take that. Definitely need to get better at gauging effort in a wetsuit. Yeah, swimming in the wetsuit makes a difference as well. You got to make sure you get the right wetsuit, because some people are faster in a wetsuit, some people are slower in a wetsuit. It can be, well, fast people can go slower if they've got the wrong wetsuit on, for sure. So just take your time getting that right. You don't want to be burning a load of gas, wasted energy because your wetsuit doesn't fit you or the shoulders are too thick, or whatever. So just kind of get some practice in there. I think that's it. Have you got anything else, Corinne, that you think we need to add?
About the drafting?
Not about anything really.
No, don't think so.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that's it for today then. I think we've pretty much covered everybody. We tied it up from last week, which is good. I think we've covered everything from today. So I hope you guys have found that useful. Lots of open watery type stuff at the moment, which is not a huge surprise. So I think we need to do some videos, Corinne, don't we, on open water bits and bobs. So we'll have to get those planned. Right, that's it then. Okay. Well, if you haven't got anything else to add, we shall see you. What are we doing tomorrow? We're doing a Q&A. I'm going to try and arrange a one-to-one Q&A tomorrow. Left it short notice as always, so we'll let you know about that. And got a briefing in the morning, and then we've got 11s on Thursday, and then we roll on as always. All right, so nice to see everybody. Hope you found it useful, and signing off. Bye. We need a cool goodbye. I saw a guy on YouTube. Who used to finish by going, putting his head down. I thought that was slightly extreme. We won't do that, but we need a cool goodbye. Anyway, just for now.